Welcome back to the channel. I am Ron. This is Fantasy Flow. Before I give you guys my favorite waiver wire pickups you need to grab before week 1 of the fantasy season, we need to have a little story time. We need to talk about last season and what the hell went down in week 1. So this is a long list, but bear with me, guys. So J.K. Dobbins tears his Achilles heel in the morning games. Gus Edwards becomes a must start pretty much the rest of the season. So that's one. Number 2, Austin Ekeler gets a high ankle sprain. Josh Kelly gets 50% of the snaps in week 1, has 20 carries in that first week 1. Ekeler still pops off, has like 25 fantasy points in week 1, but essentially Ekeler doesn't really look the same the rest of the season. Kelly kind of also looks like a fart, so he doesn't really do much. So that's Ekeler. Number 3, Cam Akers. He only gets 35% of the snaps, with Kyren Williams getting 65% and gets 2 touchdowns. I think Akers rushes like 13 times for like 20 yards, just looks absolutely abysmal. Keep in mind, Akers was drafted in the 3rd round that season. Like, he had a huge, end of the prior season. So going into 2023, Akers was really hyped up, man. Like, it seemed like the Rams are finally down to keep him around. Ends up losing his job probably in the offseason, and Kyren Williams just doesn't look back, ends up becoming an absolute league winner. Nick Chubb tears his ACL. Jerome Ford, 22 fantasy points in week 2, so he becomes that waiver wire pickup. Puka Nacua, obviously, 15 targets, 10 for 119 yards in week 1. Absolute waiver wire stud. Everybody's dropping fat stacks to get him. Somebody in my league drops like $80. So Puka Nacua, we kind of should have saw that coming. Cooper Kupp was dealing with injuries leading into the season. We weren't really sure who was going to replace Cooper Kupp's production. Ended up being Puka Nacua. A lot of experts were kind of on top of that. Lastly, Deion Jackson. He was going to be the starting running back for the Colts. Because Zach Moss broke his arm and was injured, Jonathan Taylor obviously dealing with the holdout and that whole situation that he was dealing with. Deion Jackson ends up having probably one of the worst stat lines I've ever seen in fantasy. 13 carries for 14 yards and 2 fumbles. So week 2, Zach Moss comes back, pops off, ends up becoming pretty much must start until Jonathan Taylor comes back. Just to give you guys a little piece of sad, depressing information, out of all of those players that I just listed, I picked up Josh Kelly. And I picked up Josh Kelly before the game started, right? So before the Ekeler injury, I picked up Kelly kind of as just like a flyer. Let's see what happens. It was between Kelly and, you won't believe it, I swear to God, Kyren Williams. I was like, I want to pick up one of these backups just in case, because I just watched J.K. Dobbins tear his Achilles. So in between the afternoon games and the morning games, I was like looking for backup RBs to pick up just in case. I go with Kelly, but that's a story for another day. So as I mentioned, man, Gus Edwards, Kyren Williams, Nacua, Jerome Ford, Zach Moss, these guys all become like weekly starts. Some of them become league winners. So how do we find those? How do we increase our chances of making sure that when those things happen, maybe it won't be just like last year where week 1 we have a massive shift and all this massive value on the waiver wire in week 1. Maybe it's week 2, maybe it's week 3, but you want to be prepared. You want to find these players before they become waiver wire, massive waiver wire movements for these guys. You want to get them before, right? You want to already have Zach Moss on your team, which I did. So let's start, guys. We're going to do wide receivers first. I think running backs are a little bit more important, so we'll end with running backs. So if you do want to skip around, check out the timestamps. If you do like the stuff in this video and you find it helpful, I'd really appreciate a like and a sub. And stick around, guys. You can head over to my Patreon, grab my top 100 draft list. Most of you guys are already drafted, so it doesn't matter anymore. But if you do have a draft ahead of you, that could be helpful for you. It just gives you my top 100 players. Anyway, let's move to the first guy. It is Rashod Bateman. Rashod Bateman's an interesting one. I think he's one that a lot of people might shit on instantly. I can already see the comments. He's a wide receiver 2 for the Ravens. I know that's not the best passing offense. Wide receiver 2s have really historically never really performed for the Ravens, but the team has really been gassing him up all offseason. There's been a lot of coach speak, a lot of hype on Rashod Bateman, going back to like OTAs, training camp, even the combine. Basically, here's the thesis, man. Pick him up. They play on Thursday night. If he's an absolute pile of poop, you drop him. You instantly drop him to the waiver wire and you pick somebody up on Friday morning, right? That's essentially how I view it. Just make sure that you can actually do that in your league, that you can drop players who already played as long as you haven't started them. That's how it is in my league. Next on the list is going to be Jaylen Polk. Jaylen Polk is an up-and-coming, emerging rookie for the Patriots. He's kind of in a murky wide receiver room, meaning there's not really like a true alpha wide receiver there. Demario Douglas is kind of the de facto pseudo wide receiver one for them last season, but he's really just like a slot guy. So I imagine Demario Douglas maintaining that slot role and having being kind of like a possession type receiver for them. But I think there's some space for Jalen Polk to cement himself and be like a potentially the alpha wide receiver for them. I think he's like a really high upside wide receiver that I'd be grabbing, throwing at the end of my bench and hoping something pans out for him. Third guy on the list is Michael Wilson. He's the Cardinals wide receiver 2. This one's also very simple. Should be a very potent offense. We expect he's the third target on that offense. So we do expect it's going to be Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride, and then either Michael Wilson. Some weeks it might be James Conner. I think it'll be Michael Wilson most weeks as the third guy. I think there's even a chance that he is the number 2 guy behind Marvin Harrison. I do think that they do like him. He fits that prototypical like X receiver, deep routes, post routes, and that kind of stuff. You know, that could be very beneficial. I think Marvin Harrison takes a lot of the intermediate and underneath route stuff, and I think Dortch is kind of a little bit of everything. So Dortch is also an honorable mention. If Dortch is on your waiver wire, pick him up, just see what happens. Next on the list is somebody I'm super excited about. This is someone that I drafted him at the end of my draft, and I'm actually excited about what's to come. And I know this might sound gross, but it's Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney is the clear wide receiver 2 for Atlanta, and there's no ambiguity there. There's not going to be any like, oh, well, is it going to be Dortch or Michael Wilson? It's going to be Darnell Mooney, but similar to Michael Wilson, he will be the third option. So it should probably be Drake London, then Pitts, then Mooney. I think Mooney and Pitts maybe alternate on who's like the more targeted player. There's a risk here that Darnell Mooney just ends up being a cardio route man. He's just out there running. That's very possible that Mooney is really just there to spread the field so that London and Pitts can operate underneath him. He's a very speedy wide receiver, 95th percentile in speed scores according to Player Profiler. So Darnell Mooney is somebody that I really like as a dart throw, like, you know, deep touchdown. If there's any type of like 40-yard bonuses, 40-yard touchdown bonuses in your league, Darnell Mooney is somebody that I take a shot on. Just think about Jordan Addison last year, right? We know that Kirk Cousins can help 2 dudes, right? Like Addison and Jefferson, or Thielen and Jefferson. Like Kirk Cousins is able to allow 2 guys to produce on his team. So that could be a very valuable thing if Kirk Cousins is anywhere near what he used to be. And then the last wide receiver on my list, I don't know how to say this person's name. Andrei Iosivas, Aaron. I don't know what the fuck his name is. Andrei Iosivas. Jamar Chase is still holding out, man. It is currently September 3rd. I'm spamming refresh on the Jamar Chase news. Nothing is new. He is still holding out in practice. I'm starting to sweat. My cheeks are starting to clench. The swamp ass is growing and emitting, not just growing. So that's a little bit concerning, but Andrei Iosivas is going to be the slot guy pretty much the entire season. And it's not that Andrei Iosivas is going to take Jamar Chase's role, but it just means there's going to be more targets to go around, and I think Iosivas will profit from that. So if Chase is not there in week 1, I think Iosivas can easily emerge as literally the number 2 option in this Burrow offense. There's no tight end to speak of. Their running backs are kind of both unproven, both dudes who don't really command like targets or a lot of work. So I think Iosivas is actually like a pretty solid pickup in the event Chase doesn't play, but also just as a like sneaky little Tyler Boyd type role, right? Like you might even have value beyond. And now let's switch to the running backs, guys. This is the fucking meat and potatoes. This is the juice of this video. Firstly, dude, I just want to preface this by saying, check your motherfucking waiver wire. If Keaton Mitchell is there, pick him up, throw him in your IR spot. Now, I'm skeptical of this. I fucking love Keaton Mitchell, dude. I fucking love Keaton Mitchell. Cue the Succession meme right there.
Because I love it in here. I fucking love it!
If you have an IR spot, throw him on there. I love him. I love his profile. I love his speed score. I love his like, you know, PFF ratings. Everything is wheels up for Keaton Mitchell. But ACL injury, man. He's gonna miss at least 4 games, probably more like 6 to 8. His ACL injury was pretty bad. And his value, his entire like utility of what Keaton Mitchell made, what made him special was his speed. And if you're coming off an ACL injury, say goodbye to any type of lateral speed, at least for the first year coming off the injury. And what's it going to do to his vertical speed? Is he going to be useful enough where he separates himself from a dude like Justice Hill, who kind of has a similar profile, more of like a receiving back, shifty, kind of quick out of the backfield. I don't think Keaton Mitchell gets back to a point where he can replace Justice Hill, but still worth a pickup. Next on the list, he's somebody that I just made a video about. I'll publish it somewhere up here or on this side, probably up here. And it's going to be Jaleel McLaughlin. Go watch that video on him. I go do a deep dive. I look at game film. I look at his stats. He's absolutely electric, dynamic. I'm willing to put my grandmother in a home to pick him up. I will steal the tennis balls off of my grandmother's walker. I'll do whatever I need to do to get Jaleel McLaughlin in my leagues. He shouldn't be available, to be honest, but he's going to be the RB2. And in a Sean Payton offense, that's a very good back to invest in, especially if you can get him late in rounds. He's not going to cost you much, and you can get him. He might even be on your waiver wire. He's explosive, man. He's going to be like that Kamara / Sproles type player. Definitely try to get him if he's available. This isn't necessarily in order, this list, by the way. This is kind of, I'm just shotgunning names off. Next guy is going to be Kimani Vidal. Very clear thesis. He's the third running back for the Chargers. The two guys ahead of him, one of them is old and kind of lost his step. I know he scored a lot of touchdowns, but he didn't look as... He wasn't the same yards per carry beast and Gus Edwards. The next guy is obviously J.K. Dobbins coming off, and, you know, he's coming off pretty much every injury you could have. The dude should be in our 8th grade science books in the anatomy section for, you know, just the skeleton of J.K. Dobbins with every injury he's ever had. But yeah, Harbaugh run first offense. Offensive line looked actually really good in the preseason. They were absolutely pancaking people, so this run game might be really good. Kimani Vidal could emerge as just the future for this team, and they might just like lean on him, especially after the like post bye week. I mean, so Kimani Vidal, put him at the end of your bench. He should be very good at some point. Tyrone Tracy is the next guy on the list. What can I say? He's an exciting young rookie. He used to play wide receiver. He is kind of like Antonio Gibson if Antonio Gibson was better, but I don't know if Tyrone Tracy's better than Gibson was. I don't know. But he fits that same Antonio Gibson mold. I can just see him winning this backfield from Singletary, especially like post-bye, pretty similar to Kimani Vidal. It's just, he's got juice, man. He's exciting. Singletary is like a nice grind running back. He can like grind you out good yards. He knows his role. He knows how to block. But he's just not exciting. He doesn't command a lot of attention or a lot of targets. So I can see Tyrone Tracy stealing this backfield at some point. And the next on the list is going to be Samaje Perine. This one is just like a fucking Hail Mary dart throw. Like, what if he's McKinnon 2.0? If so, he should have some value at some point, especially in negative game script. I don't know how often they're going to be in negative game script, but yeah, I'm a Pacheco owner. I'm currently quaking in my boots. I do not like this pickup. I do not like the fact that CEH is on IR and it's just Perine to take third down stuff. I hope that Perine's presence just helps Pacheco like not have such a crazy big workload that it affects his efficiency. Like, I'd rather have Pacheco at that like 75% snap share role, very high value snaps, get most of the goal line stuff. And if Samaje comes in just to like spell Pacheco and he's tired and stuff, I'm down, but that's a little bit concerning. Last on the list, he should not be available, but I had to end the video with this man. It's Jaylen Wright. I mean, he's basically the H-Han of this season for me. Like, he should not be available. He's extremely fast, extremely explosive. He fits this Dolphins team perfectly. He's pretty much like a younger version of Raheem Mostert. So if Raheem Mostert, who's like, I think 53 years old or something, give or take like 20 years, if he gets injured, Jaylen Wright probably takes the Mostert role. And if H-Han gets injured, he takes the H-Han role. And then there's still the chance that Mostert still gets injured, right? There's a chance that, like, by the end of this season, there are no Dolphins running backs. Maybe they're all injured. Maybe fucking Mike McDaniel's out there throwing arm tackle or throwing stiff arms. You never know. But he becomes a weekly starter. He might even have some standalone value. There's a lot of mouths to feed, though, so keep that in mind. I think without an injury, it's going to be tough for him to see a lot of the field. But, yeah. Audric Estime is another one. Javonte Williams was on the roster bubble at one point in this offseason. Kind of crazy. And then the coaching staff kind of flipped on him. They're like, no, we love Javonte. Like, we're all about him. He's a 3-down back. Kind of reminds me of Akers from last season. Like, we don't really like Akers. We're trying to fucking not play him as much as we can. Oh, actually, no, we love Akers, dude. Look what he did for us at the end of the season. What if, dude? What if? One more important thing, that the coaching staff views Audric Estime as a 3-down back. They're like, as long as he gets better at running, pass blocking, catching, breathing, being a person, having eyes, having a nose, paying child support. Like, they pretty much said as long as he gets better at everything, then they view him as a 3-down back. Obviously, I'm exaggerating. They did say he needs to improve on some things like pass blocking and I think receiving or something like that. But I don't know. There's just weird vibes around Javonte. What if Audric Estime becomes the kind of the first and second down back? He's like, he grinds out tough yardage. In the last game of the preseason, he started, had like 40 yards on their first drive, punches it in for a touchdown. Like, all right, you sit down, young buck. We've seen enough out of you. You made the team, dude. So that's just a nice dude. Both of these guys I currently have on my team. Estime, as well as this next guy, which is Ray Davis. I'm really excited about Ray Davis. I put him in like the Jaylen Wright category. Like, he must be owned. He probably is owned. But he could just end up being the goal line back outright. Fully goal line back. They've been trying to pair a guy with James Cook to be their goal line guy for a while now. It was like Latavius Murray at one point. Then it was Damian Harris. Damian Harris ended up retiring at like 17 years old. Like, really, really early retirement because he just couldn't handle another injury, understandably. Davis has standalone value, man. And then he becomes pretty much a league winner if Cook goes down. I mean, he's attached to a top offense. Now, caveat, I do not think they're going to be a top offense. I do think they're going to struggle without having like big name wide receivers. I think Josh Allen struggles, but that is a completely different video. Boys, I hope you like this video. That wraps it up, dude. Back to quarterbacks, back to tight ends. I don't have any names for you, dude. Just look at who's available on the waiver wire. Obviously, if there's like Matt Stafford has a really good week 1 matchup against the fucking Detroit Lions. So that should be a shootout in week 1. Absolutely phenomenal. That's going to be the game that I'm going to be watching for sure. So Matt Stafford's somebody that I'd pick up and potentially even start him. If you're starting a dude like Trevor Lawrence or something, I might pivot. Well, Trevor Lawrence isn't a good example because they also have a high over-under. But Matt Stafford could be a dude that I'd spot start if you're a streaming quarterback. Matt Stafford, somebody I like this week. Who else? Tight ends. You have your basic dudes like your Hunter Henrys who could always pop up for a touchdown or two if you need a tight end. You have guys like Greg Dulcich. I think Greg Dulcich is a super sneaky tight end this season. I think he could easily end up outscoring your back end guys like your Dallas Goederts. I know that sounds crazy, but I just think Greg Dulcich has less target competition than a dude like Dallas Goedert, who's like the 23rd option when they get into the red zone. They have so many weapons on the Eagles, right? So he's somebody that I might actually be picking up, throwing him at the end of my bench and see how he performs in week 1. Hope you guys like the video. I don't know why I'm whispering. If you do like the video, I'd really appreciate a like and a sub. Let me know what you disagree with. Let me know if there's somebody I missed. I don't have roster percentages for you guys, but I did look them up prior. I mean, I did see that most of these guys are available in enough leagues where it's worth mentioning them. Anyway, I'll catch you on the next video. Peace.